presentation is on exercise and Parkinson's disease. I'm going to be looking at what Parkinson's disease is, what parts of the brain does it affect, what is happening in the brain, and why do people have the symptoms that they do. I'll go over what the symptoms are, what people experience, and then we're going to take a look at how exercise can possibly help Parkinson's. We'll look at a few different studies. In my paper, I looked at quite a few different studies. In this one, we'll just highlight a few key studies. So to start with, let's look at what is Parkinson's. Parkinson's is the second most common neurological disease in the world. It affects almost 1% of the population, and 1 million people in the US live with it. It primarily affects people over 65 years old, and more men than women are affected. Um, Movement, cognition, emotion are all impacted, and incidence of Parkinson's is expected to rise to 1.2 million people worldwide by the year 2030. It does progress quite slowly and can often take a decade or two before incapacitation. And in many ways, this is a good thing. They're finding more and more ways to help people with Parkinson's. And one of those ways is exercise, which we'll be taking a look at. Dopamine loss in the substantia nigra is one of the primary reasons for the effects we see of Parkinson's. There's a degeneration of dopamine, which normally dopamine helps maintain healthy fluid movement. The substantia nigra is located in the midbrain and is considered a part of the basal ganglia circuitry. If you look at the image I have here, on the top is a non-Parkinson's brain. And if you see those dark lines in it, that's the substantia nigra. And that is where the majority of the dopamine in our brain is created. If you look at the bottom, a Parkinson's brain, you can see that you can hardly see that dark line. The basal ganglia, which the substantia nigra is a part of, is a subcortical cluster of nuclei that play a huge role in control and coordination of movement. There are three main paired structures in the substantia nigra, or I'm sorry, in the basal ganglia, and paired meaning that there is one on each side, one on the left, one on the right. The caudate nucleus, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, is a C-shaped structure that has key functions of planning and execution of movement, learning, motivation, reward processing, emotion. The putamen regulates planning, execution, and learning of motor skills and helps with the initiation and sequencing of movements. And then there's also the globus pallidus, which plays a significant role in regulating movements as well. Our brain not only makes movements, but importantly, it also inhibits movements. So our cortex sends signals, the motor cortex sends signals down to our basal ganglia to either initiate movement or to try to initiate movement. So it'll send something to the basal ganglia saying like, lift up your leg, for example. And then the substantia nigra would play a part in sending dopamine to as either an inhibitory response or an excitatory response. Because of the loss of dopamine, people with Parkinson's disease not only struggle to initiate movement, but also cannot inhibit it properly, leading to issues like hand tremors. So if you're not able to use dopamine to inhibit a movement, you'll have a movement start and stutter and stop, which leads to the kind of shaking you see in hands and legs. Hand tremors are only one of the various symptoms of Parkinson's disease. The other effects of the degeneration of dopamine neurons is that movements don't initiate or don't initiate well to begin with. You'll see limb stiffness, stooped posture, a shuffling kind of short stepped gait. Again, the tremors in the hands and legs. You can see rigidity in the face and back, balance issues, slurred speech. Sometimes you see what they call a masked face or stiff facial expressions. And while the substantia nigra and basal ganglia are the primary areas of the brain affected by the disease, other parts of the brain can be targeted too, and this leads to different disease expression in different people. Another important biological aspect of neurological diseases like Parkinson's is neuroinflammation. An inflammatory response is created by microglia, the brain's support cells. Microglia have many protective qualities, but can also be damaging depending on their activation state. With Parkinson's, the microglial activation in the central nervous system causes a buildup of alpha synuclein. Alpha synuclein is an abnormally folded protein that disrupts function and can cause nearby proteins to also misfold. And in Parkinson's, the alpha synuclein, this misfolded protein, is found in the substantia nigra, as well as cortical regions and spinal cord, which leads to neuroinflammation. Um, so in this study that we're looking at here, modulation of inflammatory mediators and microglial activation through physical exercise in Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, um, this group of researchers found that regular physical exercise can fundamentally alter microglial behavior, resulting in a shift from damaging to protective qualities. That natural cellular level change has been life enhancing for many patients. So molecular changes of environment result in the preservation of dopaminergic neurons, which leads to improved motor function and control. Um, this study, they looked at people's levels before and after exercise and found that there were very clear changes. Um, so with exercise, they looked at quite a few different things, but often very big movements like lifting the arms up, um, big stepping, as we saw in that other slide. Parkinson's often has slow shuffling steps, so intentionally taking big steps can be very helpful. Um, another, this was another study where they did a lot of testing before and after exercise programs, and they showed that there was a very substantial increase in in uh, the dopamine transporter availability. So they used PET scans with specialized MRI sequences. They did a program that was boxing and high energy interval training, which is getting your heart rate up and then down. You're kind of varying between high and low heart rate. So they studied some of those key markers. There were other things studied in that study, but I'm focusing really on the dopamine transporter availability. And they found that there was a 20% increase in availability of the in the substantia nigra, which is amazing. Um, there was also a increase in the putamen. Um, let's see, and then in this. Um, I thought this was a really interesting study because it was a they looked at dance, walking, yoga, tai chi, cycling, treadmill walking, and it was a meta-analysis of 52 trials with over 1,900 patients. Of all of these, in the meta-analysis, something they found was that yoga was one of the most helpful things in terms of motor improvement, but it was also really helpful for activities of daily living and also reducing symptoms of depression. It had the most positive outcomes out of any of the modalities they looked at. And I want to be clear, the other ones weren't bad. They didn't have, none of them were negative. Yoga was just very impressive. So they did a dose response analysis to see what the optimal protocol of yoga would be, and that 2 60-minute sessions a week was best. And that's really good for being able to give healthcare providers tangible steps and a good plan for patients. Um, Dance was very helpful, beneficial for cognitive improvement, like mood, and again, I'm sorry, reduced depressive symptoms. Um, Walking was improved balance and motor function, balance and motor control were helped by Tai Chi. So really, with a lot of these studies that I looked at, it seems like a mix, combining multiple exercise programs offers varying benefits. And so um, just in my own personal work as a trainer, I found that having a variety of things you do is really, really helpful. So in closing, I think it's been really wonderful to see how helpful exercise can be for uh, Parkinson's patients. The conclusion that sustained physical activity programs are beneficial for Parkinson's patients is clear. It should be a key component in treatment plans, not just an additional recommendation. And that there are many types of different movement, like I was just saying, that are beneficial. So the nice thing about yoga and Tai Chi that they can be done seated, even dance, you can sit and wiggle around and do big arm movements like you can see in this photo. Um, Patients that have more mobility, maybe earlier in their diagnosis, have options of biking, walking, more intense cardiovascular exercise. Weight training can be done seated or standing. So there's a lot of different options for people. Again, it's the second most common neurodegenerative disease in the world, and it's also the fastest growing, or one of the fastest growing, and having more non-pharmacological options is nothing but beneficial. And these studies really provide firm evidence of that. Thank you so much.